Most people think high performers are different because they're more talented, more confident, or more motivated. They're not. They wake up with the same doubts. They feel the same fear. They get tired. They get distracted. They struggle too. But there is one habit that quietly separates them from everyone else. And once you see it, you'll never unsee it. High performers don't wait. They don't wait to feel ready. They don't wait to feel confident. They don't wait for the perfect moment. They decide every single day to show up on purpose. While most people ask, do I feel like doing this? High performers ask, who must I be today? They move before clarity. They act before confidence. They commit before comfort. And here's the truth. No one tells you clarity doesn't come before action. It comes from action. Confidence isn't found, it's built. And momentum doesn't magically appear. It's created by one intentional decision after another. This habit isn't flashy. It won't impress people on social media, but it will quietly change your life. Because the moment you stop waiting and start choosing your actions intentionally, you stop hoping for a better future and you start creating one. And that's what separates high performers from everyone else. If you're ready, let's talk about that habit. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for motivation. They wake up and ask themselves, do I feel like it today? And if the answer is no, they delay their dreams, postpone their discipline, and negotiate with their potential. They think motivation is the engine that moves life forward. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Motivation is unreliable. It's emotional. It's inconsistent. It shows up when things are exciting, new, or easy, and disappears the moment things get hard, boring, or uncomfortable. High performers learned this lesson early, whether consciously or not. They stopped building their lives around motivation and started building them around something far more powerful: habit. Motivation is a feeling. Habits are decisions repeated until they become identity. Motivation fluctuates with mood, energy, weather, and circumstance. Habits remain steady even when everything else feels chaotic. That's why two people can have the same dream, the same intelligence, the same resources, yet end up in completely different places. One waits to feel inspired. The other shows up because that's who they decided to be. High performers don't wake up every day fired up and ready to conquer the world. That's a myth. They wake up tired. They wake up unsure. They wake up distracted, but they also wake up committed. They've trained themselves to act without needing emotional permission. They don't ask motivation for approval. They move first, and motivation often follows. Think about how dangerous it is to tie your future to how you feel today. Feelings change by the hour. Habits create momentum regardless of feelings. When you rely on motivation, you're at the mercy of your emotions. When you rely on habit, you're operating from intention. That's the shift most people never make. High performers understand something most people ignore. Success is not created in moments of excitement. It's created in moments of resistance. It's created when you don't feel like doing the work, but you do it anyway. And that consistency is never powered by motivation alone. It's powered by a system, a structure, a habit that removes decision-making from the equation. Because every time you rely on motivation, you're forcing yourself to decide again and again whether your goals matter. Habits eliminate that debate. When something becomes habitual, it becomes automatic. You don't negotiate with it. You don't dramatize it. You just do it. That's why high performers obsess less about hype and more about rhythm. They care about daily patterns. They care about repeatable behaviors. They care about what they do when no one is watching and nothing feels urgent. They know that excellence is built quietly, long before it's noticed publicly. Most people chase motivation through videos, quotes, music, and speeches, and there's nothing wrong with inspiration. But inspiration without habit becomes entertainment. You feel good, but nothing changes. High performers use inspiration to fuel commitment, not replace it. They take the message and turn it into behavior. They ask, what am I doing differently today because of this? The habit that separates high performers is not waking up early or journaling or working longer hours. Those are tools, not the core. The habit is this: they act intentionally even when they don't feel like. They've trained themselves to keep promises to themselves. They've conditioned their nervous system to tolerate discomfort. They've made discipline familiar instead of dramatic. And that didn't happen overnight. It was built through repetition, through small acts of integrity, through choosing effort when quitting would have been easier. Over time, those choices rewired their identity. They stopped seeing themselves as someone who tries and started seeing themselves as someone who shows up. Most people underestimate how powerful that identity shift is. When you see yourself as someone who follows through, your behavior aligns naturally. You stop needing external pressure. You stop waiting for accountability. You don't need someone to remind you of your goals because your habits already reflect them. Motivation asks, how do I feel? Habit asks, what's required? High performers live in that second question. They don't romanticize the process. They don't make excuses sacred. They don't confuse comfort with alignment. They understand that doing what matters often feels uncomfortable, and they've decided that discomfort is no longer a stop sign, but a signal that growth is happening. When motivation fades, and it will, habits remain. When excitement dies down, and it will, habits carry you forward. When no one is clapping, liking, or noticing, habits continue working in silence. That's where separation happens. Not in the spotlight, but in the routine. This is why two people can hear the same advice and get completely different results. One feels inspired and waits for the feeling to return tomorrow. The other builds a habit today. One collects ideas. The other collects evidence of consistency, and over time, the gap widens. Not because one person is better, but because one person stopped depending on how they felt to determine what they did. High performers don't have more motivation. They've simply designed their lives so motivation isn't required. They've built habits that carry them on low energy days, uncertain days, and difficult days. They've removed friction from the behaviors that matter and added friction to the ones that distract them. That's not willpower. That's wisdom. Because willpower burns out, habits conserve energy. Willpower requires constant effort. Habits run quietly in the background. Willpower says, try harder. Habits say, this is just what we do. And once something becomes just what you do, it no longer feels heavy, it feels normal. That's when progress accelerates. That's when discipline turns into freedom. This is the habit that separates high performers from everyone else. They don't wait to feel motivated. They've trained themselves to act regardless. They don't depend on emotion. They depend on intention. They don't hope consistency shows up. They practice it until it becomes part of who they are. And once that habit is installed, everything else starts to change. Most people secretly believe success is reserved for a special group of people. People who were born smarter, people who had more talent, people who got lucky at the right moment. And that belief is one of the most dangerous stories we tell ourselves because it gives us an excuse to stay where we are. It makes mediocrity feel justified and inaction feel reasonable. But the truth is uncomfortable and liberating at the same time. Success is not about talent, luck, or intelligence. If talent were the deciding factor, the world would be full of fulfilled prodigies. If intelligence guaranteed success, the smartest people would never struggle. If luck were the key, success would be random and impossible to replicate. Yet every day we see talented people who never follow through, brilliant minds stuck in the same place for years, and lucky opportunities wasted by people who weren't prepared to act. High performers understand something early that most people resist. For a lifetime, success is behavioral, not biological. It's built through choices, not gifts. It's earned through patterns of action, not moments of fortune. Talent is potential, not performance. Intelligence is capacity, not execution. Luck is opportunity, not outcome. None of these matter if you don't know how to consistently act on them. And that's why so many capable people live far below what they're capable of achieving. They confuse having potential with using it. High performers don't deny talent or intelligence. They just don't worship them. They know talent without discipline decays. Intelligence without application stagnates. And luck without courage disappears. They don't wait for the perfect hand. They learn how to play whatever hand they're dealt with excellence. Most people underestimate how much success is shaped by mundane decisions, not dramatic moments, not viral breakthroughs, but ordinary days where someone chose to prepare instead of procrastinate, to act instead of analyze, to stay consistent instead of chasing novelty. That's where separation happens. When people say they're just more talented, what they often mean is they practiced longer. When they say they're just smarter, what they usually mean is they learned how to focus. When they say they got lucky, what they're really saying is they showed up enough times to be in the room when opportunity appeared. High performers don't confuse correlation with causation. They know that visible success is the result of invisible behaviors repeated over time, and those behaviors are available to anyone willing to adopt them. Think about how many people never even attempt what they want because they believe they don't have what it takes. That belief becomes a self-fulfilling limitation. They never build the skills, never develop the confidence, never put themselves in motion, all because they decided too early that success belonged to someone else. High performers delay the judgment. They don't decide up front whether they're good enough. They decide to practice, to improve, to iterate. They let action reveal their capability instead of letting fear define it. Intelligence doesn't matter if you can't manage your energy. Talent doesn't matter if you can't manage your time. Luck doesn't matter if you can't manage your emotions. High performers invest in these fundamentals because they know execution beats brilliance when brilliance is inconsistent. Most people think success is about having the right traits. High performers know it's about developing the right traits. Traits like resilience, traits like focus, traits like courage under uncertainty, traits like the willingness to keep going when results are delayed and feedback is unclear. And those traits aren't inherited, they're trained. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room to succeed. You need to be the most consistent. You don't need the most talent. You need the highest standards for your own behavior. You don't need luck. You need readiness when opportunity shows up. High performers understand that progress compounds. Small actions done repeatedly outperform rare bursts of brilliance. Showing up every day beats showing up perfectly once. They trust the math of consistency more than the myth of genius. This is why they focus less on comparison and more on execution. They don't waste energy asking, why them? They ask, what's my next action? They don't obsess over what they lack. They optimize what they control. Effort, preparation, focus, follow through. Most people overestimate what talent can do in the short term and underestimate what disciplined behavior can do in the long term. High performers flip that equation. They play the long game. They understand that success often looks unimpressive before it looks extraordinary. And because they know success is not about being special, they take responsibility. They don't wait to be chosen. They choose themselves. They don't wait for permission. They give themselves standards. They don't wait for confidence. They build it through action. That mindset is powerful because it removes excuses. If success were about talent or luck, failure would be external. But if success is about behavior, responsibility returns to you. And responsibility, while uncomfortable, is empowering. High performers don't ask, am I talented enough? They ask, am I practicing enough? They don't ask, am I smart enough? They ask, am I focused enough? They don't ask, will I get lucky? They ask, am I prepared? Those questions change everything because the moment you stop believing success is reserved for the gifted, you start behaving like someone who can earn it. You start taking ownership of your habits. You stop romanticizing shortcuts. You stop waiting for conditions to be perfect. You realize that most people fail not because they lack ability, but because they lack consistency. Not because they're incapable, but because they quit too early. Not because they weren't chosen, but because they stopped choosing themselves. High performers live with a quiet confidence rooted in this truth. They don't need to prove they're special. They don't need validation for their potential. They trust their process. They trust their work ethic. They trust that if they keep showing up, learning, and refining, results will follow. And that belief frees them from envy and insecurity. They're not threatened by other people's success because they understand success is not scarce. It's systematic. It's built through behaviors anyone can practice. As long as they're willing to do what most people avoid, they embrace the boring work. They respect fundamentals. They repeat the basics long after others get distracted. They know mastery doesn't come from doing more things. It comes from doing the right things consistently. That's why success often looks unfair from the outside. People see the outcome, but ignore the years of quiet effort. They see the win, but not the discipline. They see the confidence, but not the repetitions that built it. High performers don't buy into the story that success is reserved for the lucky few. They know it's reserved for the consistent few. For those who decided that effort beats excuses, preparation beats hope, and action beats waiting. And once you truly understand that success is not about talent, luck, or intelligence, something shifts internally. You stop disqualifying yourself. You stop shrinking your goals. You stop giving up before you begin. You start acting like someone whose future is earned, not gifted. Most people wait for the perfect circumstances before they act. They wait to feel ready. They wait for confidence to arrive. They wait for the stars to align. They wait for permission from someone or something outside themselves. And while they wait, their potential sits quietly on the sidelines, growing frustrated, overlooked, and unused. High performers discovered long ago that waiting is a trap. They learned that success is rarely born in moments of clarity or motivation. It is born in intentional daily action, a deliberate choice to move forward even when the conditions feel imperfect. That is the habit that separates them from everyone else. The ability to act consistently, purposefully, and strategically day after day. Daily action is not glamorous. It doesn't make headlines. It's not the dramatic breakthrough moment you see on social media. But its quiet accumulation creates unstoppable momentum. Think of it like compound interest. One small action repeated consistently doesn't look like much at first, but over weeks, months, and years, it transforms an ordinary life into something extraordinary. Most people confuse action with busy work. They fill their days with activity that feels productive but leads nowhere. They check off tasks that don't align with their goals. High performers do the opposite. They are hyper-intentional. Every action is chosen. Every effort is aligned with their larger vision. They know that doing many things half-heartedly will never equal the power of doing the right things with full focus every day. And here's the hard truth. Intentional action requires courage. It requires showing up even when you're tired. It requires doing what's uncomfortable. It requires making small decisions today that might feel inconvenient but pay massive dividends tomorrow. That's why this habit separates high performers from everyone else. They choose courage over comfort consistently. The separating habit isn't about perfection. It's about commitment. High performers don't wait for the perfect plan or the perfect mood. They take imperfect steps with consistency, knowing that progress, clarity, and confidence are built in the doing. They understand that momentum follows action, not inspiration. Motivation might get you started, but it is action that keeps you going when the initial excitement fades. Consider how most people approach their goals. They imagine themselves in the future. They fantasize about the life they want. They dream about success. And then they hesitate. They tell themselves they will start tomorrow, or next week, or when they feel ready. High performers skip that trap entirely. They understand that the life they imagine is created moment by moment through deliberate steps. Every decision counts. The choice to wake up early, the choice to plan your day, the choice to complete the task you don't feel like doing, the choice to invest in learning rather than scrolling mindlessly, the choice to follow through instead of quitting. Each of these decisions is a micro action that compounds over time. High performers recognize that the quality of their actions today determines the quality of their results tomorrow. And daily action is not random. It's intentional. High performers don't act aimlessly. They act strategically. They focus on high leverage behaviors that move them closer to their vision. They don't waste energy on tasks that don't matter. They prioritize relentlessly. They align every step with their identity and their purpose. That's what gives them a disproportionate advantage over those who act without direction. Most people fail to act because they overthink. They analyze too much. They wait for the perfect strategy, the perfect plan, or the perfect set of circumstances. High performers understand that clarity is born from movement. You rarely know exactly how something will turn out until you take the first step. Action illuminates the path forward. Without it, you remain stuck in indecision, trapped by analysis paralysis. High performers also embrace accountability in their daily actions. They track their progress. They measure their behaviors. They don't rely solely on feelings or luck to determine if they are on track. They create systems, rituals, and routines that reinforce the habit of action. Over time, this consistency becomes automatic. It becomes part of their identity. It becomes non-negotiable. Intentional daily action is also about resilience. It's about showing up even when results are delayed, even when progress seems invisible, even when obstacles appear. Most people quit because the first challenge discourages them. High performers persist. They understand that momentum takes time. They know that results are the byproduct of repeated, consistent effort, not instant success. And the habit of daily action transforms more than just outcomes. It transforms the individual. Every action you take shapes your identity. Every choice reinforces who you believe you are. When you consistently act with intention, you start seeing yourself as a person who follows through, a person who honors commitments, a person capable of achieving what they once thought was impossible. That self-perception then drives even more action, creating a feedback loop of growth and performance. Most people underestimate the power of small, consistent steps. They think success requires giant leaps, overnight breakthroughs, or dramatic transformation. High performers know the truth. It's the steady, daily actions, the small choices repeated over time that separate the extraordinary from the average. That's the power of this habit. That's why it's non-negotiable. Intentional daily action also fuels confidence. Most people wait for confidence to act. High performers do the opposite. They act, and confidence follows. Every small win, every completed task, every step toward a goal reinforces belief in their capabilities. That confidence is not fake or fleeting. It is earned, reinforced, and unshakable because it is built through action. And this habit creates clarity as well. Many people sit around hoping for inspiration or insight. High performers realize that insight is rarely revealed in stillness. It is discovered in motion. You learn what works and what doesn't by doing. You refine your approach through trial and experience. Every deliberate action teaches you something that waiting could never teach. The habit of daily action also protects against regret. Most people look back on their lives and realize that they waited too long, they hesitated, they doubted. They said, "I'll start tomorrow." One too many times. High performers don't give themselves that luxury. They act now. They move today. They honor their potential by translating vision into tangible steps every single day. And here's the subtle genius of this habit. It's repeatable, teachable, and scalable. It doesn't depend on talent. It doesn't depend on luck. It doesn't depend on circumstances. Anyone can adopt this habit. Anyone can show up intentionally, align their actions with their goals, and persist over time. That is why it consistently separates those who succeed from those who merely dream. High performers also understand that action must be paired with reflection. They don't act blindly. They assess, adjust, and refine as they go, but they never allow reflection to become procrastination. They move, they measure, they correct, and then they move again. Action is never paused by perfectionism. It is refined through it. Intentional daily action is a habit that compounds invisible effort into visible results. One consistent day is nothing. A week of focused effort begins to build momentum. A month begins to change your identity. A year transforms your life. That's the exponential power of this habit. That's why it separates high performers from everyone else. And most importantly, daily action reinforces self-trust. Every time you follow through on your commitments to yourself, you prove that you are reliable, you prove that you are capable, you prove that you can create momentum in your own life regardless of external circumstances. That trust becomes the foundation for bigger goals, greater risks, and higher achievements. High performers don't wait for the perfect feeling, perfect plan, or perfect moment. They show up, they act, they choose intentional behavior over fleeting emotions. They commit to a daily practice of aligned action. And over time, this simple habit, repeated consistently, strategically, and courageously, becomes the invisible engine that drives extraordinary success. Most people spend their entire lives waiting. They wait for clarity, waiting for a perfect plan to appear before taking the first step. They wait for confidence, telling themselves they'll act when they finally feel ready. They wait for permission, believing that someone else needs to approve their actions, validate their decisions, or signal that it's safe to move forward. And while they wait, life moves on without them. Dreams stagnate, goals are delayed, potential remains dormant. High performers learned early that waiting is the silent killer of ambition. They realize that the moment you pause for permission, clarity, or confidence, you hand control of your future to someone or something else. Waiting creates inertia. It conditions you to doubt yourself. It reinforces the idea that the external world, not your own decisions, dictates what you can achieve. That's why most people never reach their potential. Not because they lack ideas, skills, or resources, but because they are stuck in a constant state of waiting. Clarity is often misunderstood. Most people think clarity comes first. They imagine that if they just had the perfect plan, the perfect conditions, the perfect moment, they would take action. But clarity is rarely discovered in stillness. Clarity is revealed through motion. You rarely know the full path until you start walking it. High performers understand this principle. They take the first step without seeing the entire staircase. They allow momentum to illuminate the next step. Action creates insight, and insight deepens action. Confidence is another illusion people worship. They believe confidence precedes action, that they must feel ready or capable before moving forward. High performers understand that confidence is built in the doing, not the waiting. Every small win, every completed task, every decision made in the face of uncertainty compounds into belief in your own ability. You don't wait to feel confident. You cultivate confidence by choosing to act even when fear and doubt are present. Permission is the most subtle trap of all. Many people live under the assumption that their life, their dreams, their success, or even their happiness is contingent upon someone else saying, "Yes, now you can." They wait for bosses, peers, mentors, friends, or society at large to approve their vision. High performers, however, realize that permission is self-granted. They stop asking for validation. They take ownership of their decisions. They create their own authority. Every step they take is authorized by their own commitment, not by someone else's approval. Most people fail not because opportunities are unavailable, but because they hesitate to act. They overanalyze, overplan, and overthink. They try to manufacture a perfect scenario that never exists. High performers, on the other hand, embrace the discomfort of uncertainty. They understand that action in the absence of clarity, confidence, or external permission is where transformation begins. The first move is often the hardest, but it's also the most important. Waiting creates a false sense of security. People convince themselves that if they just wait longer, if they just research more, if they just prepare more, success will arrive perfectly packaged. But life rarely works that way. Opportunities reward the prepared who act, not the cautious who wait. The world doesn't pause for your readiness, it moves forward regardless. High performers align themselves with that movement rather than resisting it. The separating factor is courage. High performers cultivate the courage to act despite uncertainty. They act before they feel ready. They act before they have a detailed map. They act even when the outcome is unknown. Courage is not the absence of fear, It is the willingness to move in spite of it. And the act of moving over and over again gradually converts fear into momentum, uncertainty into clarity, and hesitation into self-trust. Most people think they are being responsible by waiting. They imagine that taking action prematurely is reckless. High performers redefine responsibility. They understand that delaying action often carries far more risk than acting imperfectly. Waiting leads to missed opportunities, lost time, and regret. Acting intentionally, even without full clarity, confidence, or permission, creates feedback, learning, and progress. Clarity emerges from action. When you take steps forward, you discover patterns, see what works, and learn what doesn't. You gain understanding from doing, testing, failing, and refining. Waiting for clarity guarantees stagnation. Acting without it accelerates understanding. This is why high performers often appear decisive and sure-footed. They weren't born that way. They simply learned that action reveals the path, and then they trust the path to evolve as they move. Confidence is a byproduct of repeated commitment. High performers don't chase confidence. They cultivate it by proving to themselves day after day that they are capable. Every step taken despite doubt is a vote of self-trust. Every risk embraced despite fear strengthens identity. Confidence becomes automatic because it is repeatedly reinforced by experience rather than waiting for an emotion to appear spontaneously. Permission is a construct. Most people underestimate how much of their hesitation comes from waiting for external validation. High performers recognize that no one owes them permission. No one needs to approve their dreams. They don't rely on external encouragement to act. They cultivate internal authority. They grant themselves the right to begin, the right to experiment, and the right to move forward. That self-granted permission is liberating. It allows them to bypass indecision and start building momentum immediately. The habit of acting without waiting is transformational. It rewires your brain. It strengthens your resilience. It builds confidence. It generates clarity. It teaches you to trust yourself. And most importantly, it compounds over time. One decision to act today may seem insignificant, but the cumulative effect of taking deliberate steps consistently is enormous. High performers understand that the compound power of small, intentional actions outweighs occasional bursts of brilliance. Most people never experience this power because they are obsessed with perfect conditions. They overvalue readiness, planning, and comfort. High performers undervalue these distractions. They act, they learn, they adapt, they move forward regardless of how they feel, how much they understand, or what anyone else thinks. Every successful person you admire has taken this same approach. They acted when clarity was incomplete. They acted when confidence was lacking. They acted without permission. They allowed movement to create insight. They allowed courage to create momentum. They allowed repetition to create mastery. They understood that waiting is the enemy of progress. Acting is the ally of growth. High performers also understand that each step taken builds identity. You are who you show up as every day. The person who hesitates, waits, and second guesses develops a habit of inaction. The person who decides to move, even in uncertainty, develops a habit of action. Identity and habit are inseparable. Each day of intentional movement reinforces the belief that you are capable, resilient, and in control of your future. Most people live in the illusion of waiting because it feels safe. It reduces immediate discomfort. But waiting carries invisible costs. It erodes confidence. It diminishes clarity. It weakens self-trust. High performers embrace the temporary discomfort of action over the slow decay of hesitation. They understand that momentum is a skill built through courage, repetition, and consistency, not emotion or external approval. Taking action without waiting also creates a feedback loop that accelerates learning. Each step produces results, which produce insight, which informs the next step. Waiting for clarity or confidence, by contrast, produces nothing. High performers understand that the fastest path to understanding is movement, and the most reliable path to confidence is repeated action. Intentional action and uncertainty also fuels creativity. When you start doing, you encounter problems, obstacles, and opportunities you couldn't see from a distance. These challenges force adaptation, innovation, and problem solving. Waiting for the perfect moment never provides that learning environment. Action is the catalyst for growth, insight, and mastery. High performers know this principle deeply. They know that waiting for clarity, confidence, or permission is a trap most people never escape. They train themselves to act immediately, intentionally, and consistently. They understand that every small, deliberate move compounds over time, creating momentum, confidence, clarity, and resilience that cannot be replicated by wishful thinking or preparation alone. Most people wait to see results before they believe in themselves. They wait to achieve something before they feel capable. They wait for recognition before they feel worthy. They wait for proof before they trust their own potential. And while they wait, their lives remain stagnant, shaped more by fear and circumstance than by intention and action. High performers, however, understand a simple yet profound principle. Your identity comes first. Who you decide to be today determines what you achieve tomorrow. High performers do not leave their identity to chance. They do not define themselves by past failures or the limitations others impose on them. They understand that results are temporary, fleeting, and often influenced by factors outside their control. Identity, on the other hand, is enduring. It is the internal foundation that drives consistent action, fuels resilience, and aligns every decision with long-term purpose. Most people tie their self-worth to outcomes. They say, I'll feel successful once I earn that promotion, hit that goal, or reach that milestone. But this approach is backwards. Results are inconsistent. Life is unpredictable. Waiting to feel a certain way before acting guarantees hesitation, procrastination, and frustration. High performers invert this equation. They decide who they are first. They act in alignment with that identity, and results naturally follow. Identity drives behavior. Every choice you make is an expression of who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who quits when it's hard, you will quit when challenges appear. If you see yourself as someone who avoids responsibility, you will avoid responsibility. But if you see yourself as someone who shows up no matter what, who takes ownership, who embodies courage and persistence, your actions automatically align with that vision. Results then become an inevitable byproduct of who you have chosen to be. High performers don't rely on external validation to define their identity. They do not wait for awards, recognition, or approval from others. They create internal standards. They answer their own questions about worth, capability, and commitment. They decide that they are the type of person who follows through, who embraces challenge, who takes risks, and who persists until progress is made. That self-definition then becomes the lens through which all decisions are made. Most people underestimate the power of this choice. Deciding who you are is not a one-time declaration. It is a continuous, deliberate practice. High performers revisit their identity constantly. They ask themselves, who do I need to be today to honor my goals, my commitments, and my potential? They model their daily actions on that identity. They allow identity to guide effort, decision-making, and priorities, rather than allowing temporary emotions, fear, or uncertainty to dictate behavior. High performers know that identity precedes results because action without the right mindset is inconsistent. Anyone can work hard sporadically, but only those with a clear sense of self sustain high performance over time. Identity creates alignment between intention and behavior. It removes hesitation. It reinforces self-trust. It transforms challenges from threats into opportunities to act in alignment with who you have chosen to be. Most people try to shortcut success by chasing results first. They chase money, recognition, or achievement, hoping that success will shape them into the person they want to become. But results alone rarely change the internal narrative. Without identity, achievements are hollow. Without self-definition, success feels temporary and fragile. High performers flip the script. They define their internal standards first and then let results follow. This identity-driven approach also protects external circumstances. Life is unpredictable, full of obstacles, setbacks, and uncertainty. Those who rely on external factors for their confidence or self-worth are at the mercy of the world around them. High performers, by contrast, rely on self-defined identity. They maintain integrity, persistence, and focus regardless of external conditions. Their actions and decisions remain consistent because they are anchored in who they are, not what happens to them. High performers also understand that identity is reinforced through repetition. Every action taken in alignment with your chosen self reinforces that identity. Each act of courage, discipline, focus, or resilience strengthens the internal narrative. This is who I am. Over time, this creates a feedback loop where identity drives behavior. Behavior reinforces identity, and both accelerate results. Most people resist this principle because it requires radical responsibility. Deciding who you are first demands that you stop blaming circumstances, waiting for permission, or relying on luck. It demands that you confront your own limitations, fears, and habits. High performers embrace this responsibility. They know that self-definition is liberating because it returns control to them. They become architects of their own lives rather than tenants in a house built by circumstance. High performers also understand that identity is not static. They evolve it consciously. They ask themselves, who do I want to be tomorrow, next month, next year? They act today as the person they aspire to become, not the person they were yesterday. This conscious shaping of identity allows them to grow intentionally rather than being molded by random events or external expectations. Most people underestimate how powerful this is. By deciding who they are first, high performers eliminate hesitation. They stop asking, am I ready? They stop doubting their ability. They stop waiting for someone else to tell them it's okay. Their decisions, actions, and priorities all flow from their self-definition. This internal alignment creates clarity and momentum that external conditions alone cannot provide. Identity also shapes resilience. High performers face setbacks, failures, and rejection just like anyone else. What differentiates them is not that they avoid challenges, but that they respond in alignment with their chosen self. When adversity hits, they ask, what would the person I want to be do in this situation? That mindset turns obstacles into tests, setbacks into lessons, and failure into data for improvement. Most people fail to act consistently because they have not decided who they are. They rely on fluctuating emotions, motivation, or circumstance. High performers, however, anchor themselves in identity. They trust that if they act as the person they have chosen to be, even imperfectly, results will follow. This creates consistency, momentum, and long-term achievement. High performers also recognize that identity is contagious. The way you define yourself shapes how others see you, interact with you, and respond to you. By acting with integrity, confidence, and purpose, you create an environment that supports your growth. People are drawn to those who embody clarity and commitment. Your self-defined identity attracts opportunities, collaborators, and circumstances that align with who you are. Most people wait for external conditions to validate their identity. High performers know that validation comes from living according to their chosen standards. Every act of courage, every step of discipline, every moment of focus reinforces their self-image. They stop seeking proof outside themselves because they generate it internally through consistent, intentional action. High performers understand that identity, first thinking, is not theoretical. It is practical. It drives daily choices, habits, and priorities. It informs which opportunities to pursue and which distractions to avoid. It strengthens resilience in the face of failure and accelerates growth by creating a consistent internal reference point for decision-making. Deciding who you are before results show up is also deeply empowering. It transforms fear into action, uncertainty into clarity, and hesitation into momentum. High performers embrace this principle because it allows them to navigate life proactively rather than reactively. They act as the person they aspire to be, and in doing so, they manifest results aligned with that identity. High performers understand that identity first action is the ultimate multiplier. Skills, knowledge, strategy, and opportunity all compound exponentially when paired with a strong sense of self. Without it, even the best plans, talents, and resources can falter under pressure. Identity provides the foundation for lasting performance, influence, and fulfillment. Most people overlook this principle because it demands introspection, accountability, and courage. High performers embrace it because they know it is the difference between living reactively and living deliberately. They choose who they are and then let the world respond to that choice. Results are no longer random. Progress is no longer dependent on external validation. Life becomes a reflection of deliberate self-definition. Remember, thinking isn't enough. Planning isn't enough. Waiting isn't enough. The difference between where you are and where you want to be is action. Decide who you are, show up every day, and take that first step. Even if it feels uncomfortable, your future starts the moment you act. If this inspired you, hit like, subscribe to Action Now, and comment below what's one action you'll take today to move closer to your goals.